Welcome to our discussion for the variable costing and the cost of quality and sustainability. In many cases, for top management, they always look at variable costing as a technique in making the best and wise decisions for the organization. So bakit ginagamit nila itong variable costings? Because of its relevance in making decisions. So items that will change um, when altered or outputs expected whenever the costs are altered will have an impact on the organizations, especially for organizations that are looking for cost efficiencies, for restructuring and revitalizing operations because of the goal of minimizing costs. So mahalaga na ma-identify natin yung costs that can be cut while not sacrificing uh, quality and sustainability in the operations. So for this discussion, we look at concepts related to those items. Okay. So at the end of this discussion, we will be able to explain the accounting treatment of the fixed manufacturing overhead under absorption and variable costing, which is treated as a review also. Prepare the income statement under absorption and variable costing. These items ay hindi nawawala during your CPA licensure exam. How do we reconcile the reported income under absorption and variable costing since there is a difference between them? So, bakit nagkakaroon nung ganong klaseng difference? This is just also a recap of what you have already have learned. But susubukan nating i-explain ng uh, by concept para mas maintindihan natin yung differences between them. We explain the implications of absorption and variable costing of CVP analysis. CVP analysis has already been discussed in the last discussion video. We evaluate absorption and variable costing. We prepare quality cost report. We discuss the two contrasting views of the optimal level of product quality, and we understand the different types of environmental costs and discuss the management of these costs. So itong items 8-8 and 8-9 is only for your reading. At saka itong 8-7. Ang ating focus is the items of absorption and variable costing. Okay? So the main difference between absorption and variable costing is that we use absorption costing when we are reporting outside. So kung external or public ang orientation ng iyong reporting, dapat gamitin mo yung absorption costing. While kung variable costing ang ginagamit mo, your report is intended for your internal user, normally your top management. Kasi iba ang yung variable costing is non-compliant to the GAAP at doon sa financial reporting standards. This is only for internal purposes. We know how the work in process, the finished goods inventory, and the cost of goods sold works in the manufacturing cost flow. So in absorption and variable costing, the key to analyzing and reconciling items is the fixed manufacturing overhead because later we will have a practical application of this. And conceptually, we know that under the variable costing, ang treatment natin sa items ay kung yan ba ay variable or fixed regardless of the nature. Kung yan ay variable or fixed regardless of the nature. However, under absorption costing, we look at items um, based on its nature and not on its whether it's fixed or variable. So nature ang tinitingnan natin doon. Kung yun ba ay manufacturing or non-manufacturing. I repeat, kapag absorption costing, we look at cost whether it is manufacturing or non-manufacturing. While in variable costing, we look at cost whether it is variable or fixed regardless of its nature. So magkabaliktad siya. Okay. So under absorption costing, we look at direct material, direct labor, all manufacturing overhead. all manufacturing overhead. So when costs are incurred, we place it in the work in process inventory on balance sheet. And then when goods are finished, we place it under finished goods inventory on balance sheet. And when goods are sold, we expense on income statement. Under variable costing, direct material, direct labor, and the variable only manufacturing overhead is treated as a part of your manufacturing cost. And then when costs are incurred, we place it under the WIP inventory balance on balance sheet or the statement of financial position. And then when goods are finished, we locate it to the finished goods inventory on the balance sheet or the statement of financial position. When goods are sold, it is expense on the income statement, same as that of the absorption costing. Okay? Under the variable costing kasi, sabi dito, the variable overhead lang ang nakasama doon sa fixed, doon sa manufacturing, doon sa total manufacturing cost. What happens to the fixed manufacturing component? Sa absorption, nakasama kasi doon. Okay, sorry sa unwanted noise. Please bear with me. The fixed manufacturing overhead under the variable costing when incurred are expense on the income statement under the variable costing approach. Okay? So this figure or presentation will guide you as you go along on your analysis of items. There are problems under illustration on our reference book. You may refer to these items. Okay, but I want to emphasize the last problem indicated on the. You have to read how to reconcile under absorption and variable costing for these items. But I will be focusing on the last. Also, the integration of CVP analysis, yung last items. Okay? Yung last problem, yun yung gagamitin natin as point of reference. Please also review this, yung cost of quality, yung internal and external failure appraisal and prevention costs, because these concepts are sometimes presented under management advisory services ng SIPALE. So merong one or two items na tinatanong dyan. Normally by definition or by example, yung halimbawa cost of repairing defects, ano yon, internal or external failure or appraisal, ganon. So medyo simple lang, so you just have to identify what type of cost is that. Okay, I am navigating through the last problem for this discussion. Okay, lahat ng nadaanan will be for your reading. Normally, mga conceptual items yan. For you to better understand the concepts under variable costing and sustainability and cost of quality. Okay, we will be using this item, yung the review problem on variable and absorption costing under page 338, as it has also its own discussion of how to solve this review problem. So we have a company that manufactures backpacks used by the students. So a typical backpack has the following price and variable cost. So meron siyang selling price 45, and then binigyan ka ng variable cost, direct material, direct labor, and overhead. So naka-separate na siya. Okay? So, ang orientation pag ganito yung ay parang, okay, variable costing ang approach kasi sineparate agad yung variable cost. Hindi ka na pinahirapang i-separate yung variable components to its fixed components. Budgeted fixed overhead in the company's operation was 900,000. Actual and planned production was 150,000, of which 125,000 were sold. So, ito yung gagamitin mo kapag tinitingnan mo yung cost of goods sold. Yung cost of the number of items sold, 125,000. Okay, the company has the following selling and administrative expenses. So nakahiwalay naman yung selling and administrative. Fixed is 150,000 for the year and variable is 3 per unit sold. We are required to compute the product cost per backpack under variable and absorption costing, the income statements under the both approaches, and the reconciliation of the income under the two methods. Okay, let's proceed now. How do we get the product cost per backpack under variable and absorption costing? First, we have to identify the predetermined fixed overhead rate for this problem. How do we get the predetermined fixed overhead? We use the budgeted figures. The budgeted fixed overhead is 900,000 divided by the budgeted production na 150,000. Ang nakalagay dito, the actual and planned production is 150. So, hindi mo na kailangang i-distinguish yung actual versus the budgeted. So, 900,000 divided by 150 is 6 per unit. So, this is your predetermined fixed overhead rate. So, what's the use of this predetermined fixed overhead rate? Dahil nga gumagamit tayo ng normal costing in most cases in manufacturing activities, hindi natin kailangan ma-estimate natin yung ating fixed overhead for the future periods. So hindi kapag kasi ang ginamit natin is the actual fixed overhead rate, ay hindi na yun magiging relevant or timely on the decision of the management. So, kaya gumagamit tayo ng predetermined. So, these are estimations of the fixed overhead rate. So, tandaan mo, we have 6 per unit. This is not yet the answer because we will still have to compute for the product cost. And the product cost involves the direct material, direct labor, and overhead. Okay. Let's look at this. The direct material, the labor, and overhead is 15 plus 6 plus 9 per unit. So, the cost per unit under the variable costing is 30. Remember, variable costing ka kasi. Kaya ang yung product cost is only under the items related to variable items. Yung variable manufacturing cost. So, 30. The fixed overhead per unit under absorption costing, okay, na-compute nating predetermined is 6, i-add mo lang po doon. So, because that is the difference. Remember, the key is the fixed manufacturing overhead. So, yung unit na na-compute mong predetermined fixed overhead rate would be the reconciling item for the two. So, ang cost per unit under absorption is 36. That is 30 computed mo under variable costing plus 6. 36 ang iyong absorption costing. So, you already have answered item 1. Let's go to item 2. The income statement under variable costing. The sales revenue is 125,000 times 45 per unit. That is 5.625 million less the variable expenses less the fixed expenses. So, I have to emphasize this. Under the variable costing income statement, di ba, ang sinasabi ko kanina ay under variable costing, you segregate the cost based on whether it is variable or fixed. Kaya yung variable items nasa taas at fixed items nasa baba, regardless of whether it is non-manufacturing or manufacturing cost. Kaya nga yung variable manufacturing cost mo is 30 per unit. So 30 per unit daw yan at variable cost na 30 per unit. How do we get 3.75 million? That is 1. Ilan ang production? 150,000 times 150,000 times 30. Kasi yun yung na-manufacture. 3.75 million. The variable selling and administrative cost is 3 per unit times 125,000 units sold. Okay? Remember ha, huwag kang malilito dyan kasi baka mamaya ang magamit mo is the 150,000. Selling po. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga nabenta lang, yun lang yung merong variable selling cost. Okay? So, that is 375,000. So, contribution margin will be 5.625 million minus 3,750,000 minus 375,000 is 1.5 million. Minus mo po lahat ng fixed expenses na nandyan sa problem. 900,000 for fixed overhead and then fixed selling and administrative 150. So, your operating income under variable costing is 450,000. Okay, let's go with the absorption costing income statement. Under the absorption costing income statement, ang sinasabi lang po dito ay i-separate mo yung items based on its nature. Okay, so ito yung ginagamit natin on external reporting at yung normal na ginagamit natin na nakikita mo sa mga income statements ng manufacturing companies. Sales revenue, hindi yan magbabago. That is 5.625 million less the cost of goods sold. Remember, the cost of goods sold under absorption costing income statement uh, is based on the full cost, yung absorption cost, yung total ng lahat ng manufacturing cost kasama yung fixed manufacturing overhead. So therefore, yung na-compute mo na under item number 1 na 36 per unit, yung product cost per backpack under item number 1 under absorption costing na 36 na na-compute mo, yun yung gagamitin mo. You multiply it to the number of items sold kasi ito po ay cost of goods sold. So that is 36 times 125,000. Okay? Less yung selling and administrative expenses. Kasi nga 'di ba hinahati mo 'yan, sineseparate mo 'yan based on the nature. Kaya kahit na pa yan ay variable and fixed, uh, hatiin mo siya based on the nature. Kaya yun yung madaling identification between the two, 'di ba? Pag pinagagawa ka ng income statement. Dito sa variable costing, nasa taas lahat ng variable. Pero dito sa absorption costing, by nature siya. Lahat ng manufacturing cost nasa taas at lahat ng non-manufacturing ay nasa baba. Okay? So variable costing 3 times 125, 375, and then fixed is 150,000. Given yan. So gross margin divided by gross margin is 1.125 million minus 375 minus 150 is 600,000. Please also take note of the terminologies. Kapag nakita mo contribution margin, ibig sabihin that is variable costing approach. Kapag gross margin, that ibig sabihin that is absorption costing approach. Okay? So now, we already have answered item number 2. So we go back to item 3. Ang sabi, you reconcile the income reported under the two approaches. How do you reconcile? Kasi makikita mo that the operating income under variable costing is 450 and the operating income under absorption costing is 600,000. So how do you reconcile and analyze these scenarios? Okay, you analyze it based on where the fixed overhead, kasi 'di ba the key is the fixed manufacturing overhead. So tingnan mo, the cost of goods sold under absorption costing is 4.5 million. Ito 'yon. The variable manufacturing cost under variable costing is 3.75 million. So uh, ano ang difference? The difference is 750,000. So ano yung 750,000 na yan? Yaan po yung fixed manufacturing overhead na nakarecognize sa absorption costing as item of the manufacturing cost, pero dito ay sa variable costing ay hindi siya sinama. So meron tayong 750,000 less yung fixed manufacturing overhead as period expense under variable costing. As magkano ba kasi ang ni-recognize na period expense under variable costing? Kasi 'di ba, sa variable costing kung magkano yung fixed overhead, expense na yun kaagad dun sa period na yun. 900,000. So 750 minus 900,000 is 150,000 ang difference po nila. Kaya nga, yung operating income under variable costing is 450 lang at yung operating income under absorption costing is 600,000. Okay, so that is the difference, yung 150. Okay. Let us analyze more itong 150,000 na ito. Ang sinasabi lang po dito ay, under variable costing kasi, in-expense mo lahat yung fixed overhead, 900,000. Pero sa absorption costing, hindi mo lahat in-expense yung item na yon, 'di ba? Kung titingnan mo, 750,000 lang yung talagang in-expense or isinama doon sa computation ng cost under the absorption costing. Okay? Under the absorption costing. Pero sa variable, 900 agad. Sobrang malaki. Kaya nga, kung titingnan mo, dahil malaki yung in-expense, tuloy 450 mas mababa tuloy yung operating income mo under variable costing. So based on this, Exactly the reason why hindi ginagamit for external reporting and is not compliant to GAAP yung concept ng variable costing kasi yung fixed manufacturing overhead na nakalagay dito na na-incur for that period are really not fixed overhead for that period. So, pwede kasi na merong overhead coming from the prior period na na-carry over for that particular item, for that particular period. Yun ang ginagawa ng absorption costing. 'Di ba? Nakamatch yung benefit doon sa cost. Yung matching principle under GAAP, nakamatch under absorption costing. Unlike sa variable costing na basta na-incur yung fixed overhead na yan on this period, i-expense lahat. Okay? Basta hindi niya minamatch. Hindi niya minamatch yung benefit arising from that fixed cost kung kailan mo siya i-recognize. Okay? So that is the real explanation why the absorption costing income statement has been used for external purposes and the variable costing is only used for the internal purposes of the company. Okay, so that I think that ends the discussion for the variable costing and its application via the absorption costing income statement. Thank you.